Assalamu alaikum, my friends. Today is a big day. I know I say every day is a big day, but today is really a big day because we're starting out the actual drawing of the Qur'an Year Timeline. Make sure you go to my website, therevelationexperience.com, before you continue with this episode so that you can download a free PDF of the Qur'an Year Timeline, one filled out with all the answers, one totally blank, so you can fill it in while we go through this together. So again, link down below, revelationexperience.com. Check that out, join the community. Now, let's do that intro. So I hope all of you were able to watch the previous episode. That was really important because we're setting the stage for the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And if you remember, we had something that looked a little bit like this. We had the prophets, and we said that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the exclamation mark at the end of a long sentence. What is that sentence? Well, we wrote it out in the last episode. We said Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, peace be upon them all. And there is a story here, right? The Prophet Muhammad, when we study him in isolation, we don't see the beauty of the entire story that we're seeing right here. Now, what is that story of revelation? Well, remember, we said that God promised Adam that revelation will come down from me to you, and he sent it down, certainly to Noah, to Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and so many other prophets. And then the final prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, right here, and God sent down the Qur'an, the final revelation, which confirms all the previous revelations, and we hear this often repeated in the Qur'an. Take a listen.
شرع لكم من الدين ما وصى به نوحا والذي أوحينا إليك وما وصينا به إبراهيم وموسى وعيسى أن أقيموا الدين ولا تتفرقوا فيه كبر على المشركين ما تدعوهم إليه الله يجتبي إليه من يشاء ويهدي إليه من ينيب.
So if this is a brief story of Revelation, the question is, well, what is this sentence? What is the story of Revelation? And we talked about in the previous episode, we hit some major themes. And again, these were just introductions. We didn't even go into it in any detail because that's for after we finish the Qur'an Year Timeline. But we mentioned a few things. We said that we learned from the story of Adam that you watching right now, all of you guys, me, we are so special. God created us to be the Khalifa, the successors on earth, to be his representatives, right? So we are special. Let's not forget that. We also learned that mistakes equal growth, okay? And we will get into this also, this idea of a growth mindset. You have to make mistakes in order to grow. And God taught to Adam that once you make a mistake, just make tawbah, come back. Turn back to God, okay? Other things that we learned is that God promised Adam that if you follow my revelation, you will live a life without fear or regrets, without griefs. A very powerful way to live life, okay? What else is in the story of Revelation? We talked about conviction is power. If you're feeling lonely, if you are feeling lonely, remember that you are never alone, okay? We see this in the stories of so many prophets. The story of Revelation also includes the fact that sincerity is everything. You have to be sincere. We learned that in the story of Abraham, that faith is a process. We see that story in all the prophets. Specifically, we see that play out in the story of Moses, and we will dive into all of these stories. And then a last one, a big one, when the story of Jesus, peace be upon him, is that always start with a question of why. Don't focus on the rules for the sake of the rules. Remember what the rules are meant to take you to. So go back to your intentions and make sure those intentions are coming from inside, right? Intrinsic motivation. Again, these are just big overviews right now. And if this stuff doesn't make sense to you, feel free to go back and watch the previous video. And if it's still not making sense for you, don't worry about it at all. We're going to dive into all of this stuff in a lot more detail in a way that's actually helpful for you, the way you are living your life, so that you can live powerfully, okay? But all of this is part of this long sentence, the story of Revelation that began with Adam, went through that line of prophets, and ended right here with the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Now, I promised you that we're going to get to the Qur'an Year Timeline. This is my big contribution, I think, to understanding the Qur'an and understanding the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, in a way that's transformational for you, right? So today what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and I'm going to start showing you the way that I started breaking it down in a way that was super helpful for me so that I could always hold on to the message and also the material. So what I would like to do today is I want to focus specifically on the story of Muhammad. So let's take this right here and we're going to put him up here, okay? So this is the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to draw his life like a timeline, okay? From birth to death. Now we know that the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, was born in what we believe is 570 years after Isa alayhi salam, Jesus Christ, okay? So in the year 570 he was born, and if we could draw his life like a timeline like this, we could just number his life in just very basic rudimentary ways like this. So over here is when he was born, okay? So we'll just say year 1, and then over here, let's actually pick a better marker than that one. Let's do this one, because I think this will show up a little bit brighter than that one. Let's try that again. So year 1 right here, and then over here we have his death, and he died when he was 63 years old. Okay. Now, when you are looking at the life of the Prophet Muhammad, and peace be upon him, and I've tried to cut this up in so many different ways to figure out what are the simplest ways to understand this, and I always felt that the easiest way to first divide his life is in that period of time where before he received his first revelation, before he was a prophet, and that period of time after his first revelation, the period of time he was a prophet receiving the revelations of the Quran. And that happened right here. If we draw a line right here, that'll happen at what we will say is year 40, okay? So when he is 40 years old, he actually gets the revelation. So what you see is this white line right here represents Muhammad ibn Abdullah, right? This is just Muhammad before he's a prophet. And the second part right here, this blue part, is Muhammad al-Rasulullah. This is Muhammad, the messenger of God. Okay, so this is the first major subdivision. Now we can further subdivide the subdivision one more time right here. So let's just draw a line right there. And this happened when he was roughly 52 years old. Okay, now what is this event? Well, you can see here I've now made 3 colors. I have the white color, the blue color, and the green color. Okay. What this represents is this moment in time when he was roughly 52 years old, when he was living in Mecca. So he had lived in Mecca from birth all the way until 52. And he had been preaching for 12 years in Mecca as a prophet. It got so intense, and there was so much hatred, there was so much wickedness towards him, and they were trying to kill him, drive him out. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he actually emigrated. He left like a refugee from one city of Mecca to the future city of Medina. And so what this represents here in this timeline is 3 major episodes in his life. The period in Mecca before he was a prophet, which is 40 years. The period in Mecca where he is a prophet, which is 12 years. And this period in Medina, which is the period of time where he's a prophet in Medina, and that is 11 years, okay? So let's take this right here and take a look at this right here. Now this is really important. This period of time right here, okay, I'm going to write it really bright because I really want you guys to know this stuff. This period of time right here is 23 years. And 23 years equals the period of the Quran. This is when the Quran is being revealed right here. This 23-year period, okay? We have 11 years right here. we have 12 years right here, and we have 11 years right here. So 12 plus 11 is 23. Really important, okay? And this is really what we're going to be focusing on. We do have some information here in this period of time before he's a prophet, peace be upon him, and we will get into that. I go into a lot of detail in that in my audio kind of podcast, the Revelation audio experience. But for the moment right now, what I want to do is I want to break this down because this is where all the serious action is happening, and this is when the Quran is being revealed. So let's take this and let's just blow this up real quick here so we can take a look at it. The Meccan period, 11 years. The Medinan period is the Meccan period is 12 years, the Medinan period is 11 years, okay? Really important here. Now, what I want you to do is now just commit these numbers to memory, because it's not a lot, and I promise I'm going to try to be as efficient as possible when it comes to memorizing stuff. I'm not a big fan of having to memorize unnecessary amounts of information, but there is a certain amount of stuff that if you memorize it, it just pays huge dividends later on. So remember, the Meccan period right here, and I have a model here to help you remember that, okay? We have the Meccan period right here, which is the blue part. This is going to be how long? 12 years. The Medinan period right here is the green part, and this is going to be 11 years. Okay, and so this right here is basically the same representation as this right here. I hope you guys can see that, okay? This is just something I can actually hold on to, and this is the period of Qur'anic revelation. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. Again, 12 years, 11 years, put them together, you have the Quran, 23 years revealed over 23 years. Now, let's take a look at this real quick here, okay? When I was studying Seerah, when I was studying the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, especially when I was reading Martin Ling's book, listening to the CDs by Sheikh Hamza Yusuf and so forth, you know, when you start diving into this, it's pretty straightforward. You start taking notes, maybe writing down some names or some basic facts that you need in the Meccan period, move on to the Medinan period, there's a couple more facts. What happens is that as you dive deeper and deeper into it, before you know it, it starts getting really overwhelming. The names start adding up, and before you know it, you just feel like, oh my gosh, like how am I gonna know all of this information? I was good with a little bit, but this is like overwhelming, and now I'm feeling lost again. And this is what happens to so many people, is that they get just lost in the names, and then they kind of give up knowing, really mastering the material, and they're just like, I'm just gonna gist it. I'm just gonna get the gist of like what was happening in this kind of this block right here, forget all the names around it. Big mistake, okay? I'm telling you guys, really big mistake, because when you don't know those details, you lose all the richness of the Prophet's life, peace be upon him. You lose the beauty in the details, okay? Now, this is not meant to be burdensome. This is meant to add color, right? It's like, would you rather watch a movie in black and white, or would you rather watch it in color? And so I'm here to just really encourage you to try to make sense of those names. Okay, now there's a very important concept that I want to be clear with you guys right now about, okay, because this is something that a lot of people struggle with. And so if this is your conception, I want to break down this conception right away, because it's not doing you any favors, okay? The Quran was not a book that just came down in one package. It wasn't like an Amazon box that showed up at the Prophet, peace be upon him's, front door, and he just got this box opened up. This is the entire revelation. You know, it wasn't like the tablets that just were inscribed and showed up. The Quran came down page by page, okay? When you see this right here, I want you to start imagining it like a download bar, okay? How many of you have downloaded, you know, like a manual from, you know, online or whatever, or you're copying a file? You know, in fact, let's put up a GIF right now. I want you to start imagining the Quran like this right here, okay? How many of you know this image right here, right? This is the image of trying to transfer files page by page. As we're seeing right here, take a look. Page, another page comes over. Okay, now another page is coming over. And we are slowly trying to get this download bar all the way from here. We're trying to fill this download bar all the way up to here. That's how I want you to start thinking about the Quran, okay? Like this model right here, that's why I built this like this, is I want you to start thinking, just like you have those squares right here, I want you to start thinking of the Quran as a download bar like this, okay? The Quran will come down. The Meccan surahs have to come down first. For a large period of time, this was the Quran. And for a large period of time, it was only one bar. Then 2, 3, 4 over the years. Then after 12 years of time, then when the Prophet, peace be upon him, made the hijrah, the migration, the what? The Medinan period starts. So again, please think of the Quran as this download bar, not as this just one lump, you know, CD that just arrived at the Prophet, peace be upon him's doorstep. It was a process. So remember that, because we are going to talk about this idea of process over and over again. This is actually one of the cardinal rules that I showed you in the story of Revelation. Islam is a process. Even Dr. Sherman Jackson, he talks about this idea of Islam and the idea of growing into Islam being a process. Now, why am I spending so much time on this? Because what we have to do, and this is like one of the really important distinctions as we dive into the story of Revelation and the story of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is that you have to recognize that the companions around the Prophet were given time to download the information. Right? Just like this image is downloading. Imagine if this folder right here is the companion's heart and this is the Prophet, right? First, the file has to be given from God to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, through the angel Jibreel. But then the Prophet, peace be upon him, has to now download that file, share that file with the companions in their heart. And he's recognizing it takes time to adopt stuff. It takes time to change your heart from what you used to know and what you were used to now doing what the Prophet is telling you to do, what God is commanding you to do. It takes time. But we as a community, I don't know why, we don't give anybody time. We expect everyone to be perfect from the first day. And when anyone makes one misstep, we say, oh, astaghfirullah, why don't you do this? Don't you know this is haram? Don't you know this? Don't you know that? As assuming that you can just take a CD and just download it into your heart in one shot and like you have the whole Quran uploaded. It doesn't work like that. It didn't work like that for the best of the best companions. Why should we expect that from our friends and our family members, from our spouses and our children? We have to give people the time and space to come to the Quran and let the Quran come into their heart page by page. Now it's another story if we're not taking the download, if we're like keeping that folder closed and we're not accepting the pages as they come in, that's on us, right? That's on us to accept the pages, open our heart, just like this folder is open the folder and let the pages come in. But even then, it takes time. So process, really important. Okay, anyway, let's go back to this imagery of the Qur'an years right here, okay? So we said 12 years right here, 11 years right here, the Meccan period and Medinan period. Now, like I showed you in the previous slide, I had all these names, okay? My mind, and this is, I started this journey in 2003 roughly. By 2010, 7 years into it, I knew a lot about the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and yet I could not really take anything and like pull it out of my memory without having to like look stuff up in my books, in my notes, charts, diagrams, and so forth. I'll tell you a little story. What happened is that in 2010, I had finished working in Boston at the time, and I had decided that I was going to make a move to Arizona. And I had a few months off in that time, in between jobs. And this is very rare, for a lot of physicians, it's very rare to have time off in between jobs. I haven't had time off since I left high school. And so I had about 3 months of time off, and I was trying to figure out what I should do at that time. I was single at the time, and I thought maybe I'll go travel to Europe or, to Turkey, or go have fun. But what I realized is that when I was going through a lot of the difficult periods of my life, okay, through life, relationships, work, training, and so forth, throughout all of that, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was always by my side because I was working on Revelation. He was always there with me. Whenever I wanted to spend time with him, he was there with me, okay? And so now that I had all this time off, I felt that I wanted to give that time back to him instead of just doing my own thing. I felt compelled to really spend time on Revelation. And so instead of traveling abroad and doing something, crazy, like go to Europe or climb a mountain or go to South America or something like that, I decided to actually go to Kansas, like of all places, right? I went to Kansas. It's a beautiful place. And that's because my sister was living there at the time. I decided I'm just going to spend some time with my little sister, my brother-in-law, and their family, and spend a Ramadan with them. And while I am there with them, just reconnecting with my family, I am going to dive into this Revelation project, this Lings project, as I was calling it at the time. I'm just going to dive into it and just really own it. And that's when I finished the glossary. And that's also when I came up with the Qur'an Year Timeline. The Qur'an Year Timeline is my solution to how do you figure out and remember all the details in these 23 years in a way that you will never forget. And I struggled with this for a long time. I really did. I played with this, and I was looking at this example right here of these years. Let's advance this, let's bring this up here, right? So I was looking at this stuff right here, and I was like, maybe I can make this timeline. Maybe if I make it a vertical timeline and do some mnemonics on it to memorize it. Maybe if I stack the timeline like this, I can come up with some kind of cool like system to memorize all the information. I was trying to figure it out. And then one day, I remember this is in the summer of 2010, I started playing around with a piece of paper and a compass, and I decided to try some circular patterns to see if circles might be the answer to coming up with this Qur'an Year Timeline. So let me show you what I did here. I'm going to put this kind of this makeshift compass that I've designed here, okay? And what I decided to do is I thought, what if I draw the Qur'an Year Timeline as a circle? Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about, because I know this might be kind of, crazy for you guys. So we're going to put a dot right here. And instead of it going straight out, what if I bring it down like this? So we're going to go down like this, straight to the bottom. And then let's do another one. Oh, I love compasses. They just make things look so much prettier, don't they? Now, let's see here. And then let's finish this part right here back up around again. Okay. Let's do it for this side too. Okay. There we go. Now, if this isn't making sense to you, it will here in a second. I thought to myself, what if I take this block right here and I just wrap it down like this, okay? Let me show you what that looks like, okay? It would look like this. I would have this kind of circular timeline right here, and I would have this blue part right here, which would be the Meccan period, and then I would have this green part right here, which would be the Medinan period, okay? So it's kind of like this, and it wraps around in a circle like that. Now, what this allows you to do is we can do this. Take a look. We can now say that this side, right, is the Meccan period, and this side is the Medinan period, okay? Before we kind of had it like this, but now we've wrapped it around, so the Medinan period is on the other side, okay? Now follow with me here, because this is going to become really powerful and really helpful for you, okay? If the Meccan side is here and the Medinan side is here, what we can do is start numbering stuff, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, okay? And remember, we said that there were 12 years in the Meccan period. Now, how many were there in the Medinan period? How many did we say? All right, here's a little hint, okay? If you want a little hint, there was 12 here. How many are here? One less, so there are 11, okay? So let's do 11 years on the Medinan side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We have 12 because it's a full circle. So let's now subtract that last year right there and erase it. And I'm going to erase this right here so we don't have any extra markings here. All right. Now, take a look at that, my friends. This is a new timeline. It's circular, and hopefully this is making sense to you. Now, what I want to do here real quick is I want to actually just change the numbers, because right now we have 12 going this way and we have 11 going this way. What I want to do is create one timeline. I don't want two number ones. We have a number one here and a number one over here. I don't want to do that. I just want to have one consistent timeline for the entire thing. So let's just do this, okay? Let's go ahead and erase this. So that's what we just did. We erased all these numbers, and let's renumber it continuously. So we already have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Those are the years of the Meccan period. Let's keep adding from here. So let's make this 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and we end at 23. And yes, just like we said in our model right here, this is 23 years. This is the Qur'an year journey. This is the story. But now we have a circular timeline that is 23 years, and I call these 23 years Qur'an years. Okay, and from now on, these will always be referred to as Qur'an years. All right, Qur'an year 1 through Qur'an year 12. If you say 1 through 12, I already know it's a blue year, meaning it's a Meccan year. If you say Qur'an years 13 through 23, I already know there are green years and they are Medinan years. So now you guys are getting a sense of the basic building blocks of the Qur'an Year Timeline. Now, I'm going to tell you in future episodes, I'm going to explain to you the other ways historically that we have looked at events in the Qur'an Year, in the journey of the Quran, right? We have, first of all, we have the Islamic calendar, which is called the Hijri calendar, in which you have negative numbers and positive numbers. That's the system that, that our rightly guided caliphs came up with. And of course, we believe that. We follow that system. But from a cognitive perspective, I actually find that kind of difficult to study the Quran because you have negative numbers, positive numbers, and I think it gets confusing. I'll dive into that in a future episode. We also have the Gregorian system. You could say, oh, this happened in 610 and 623 and 632, and that's just random numbers starting in the 600s, which is always difficult to understand. So I don't like that system also. And so for those reasons, I don't like those two other systems. I like one continuous system. I know when you say Qur'an Year 3, I know we're talking in the very beginning. This happened in the third bar of the download, right? So I know that. If you say Qur'an Year 6, I know it's over here in the middle of this because this was 12. So by using Qur'an years, it's just very easy to know where you are in the download bar. But this is like a pinwheel where the download bar goes from here all the way back up here, and this is where you are complete. So this, my friends, is the Qur'an year system right now. Now we're going to elaborate on that a little bit more, but I want you to really just take a look at that and make sure that you understand everything that we have talked about up to this point. Now remember I told you that the Qur'an years and the story of the Quran and the story of the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, is the exclamation mark at the end of a long sentence. And so I want to end this episode just kind of circling back to that, okay? What did I say? I said that right here, the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, right here, is an exclamation mark. You know what? Let's make this entire thing a giant exclamation mark. Can we do that? Does that look like an exclamation mark to you? Hang on, let's color it in. Okay, this is the exclamation mark. This, and then this down here, okay? Muhammad, amazing. But he is the end of a long sentence, and this is the entire sentence. What is that sentence? That sentence, again, to bring it back home, is a sentence of you understanding how special you are. You knowing that you are supposed to be making mistakes. It is okay and human to make mistakes as long as you pick yourself up and keep growing, keep climbing after you make that mistake. Remember that this whole purpose of revelation is to live a life without fear and without grief. Conviction, the more convinced you are of the truth of this revelation, the more power you will be, the more powerful you will be. It's like that movie The Matrix. The more you believe and recognize the reality of life, the more power is in your hands to actually to live comfortably without fear and without grief, right? Remember, there's no reason to feel lonely, okay? Because even when you are feeling lonely, which you will, everyone felt lonely, and the prophets felt the loneliest at times. Remember, often those are the moments where you are most reminded that you are actually not alone at all. Sincerity is everything. Without sincerity, there is nothing. Sincerity is the most important part of the component for a believer as he approaches God. And that approach is a process. Faith is a process. And however you begin, you always begin starting with the question of why and ending with why. This is the story of revelation. And if you notice, everything is an exclamation mark here, right? Power, never alone. Sincerity, process, everything. This is the exclamation mark. And what we will see is that this journey right here, that you are seeing right here, this Qur'an year, this right here will encapsulate all of this. All of these points that were taught to us by the coaches who came before the Prophet Muhammad, his coaches, the great prophets who came before, they had the best plays, the best moves. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, I like to say, was our coach. And he took the coaching moves of the best coaches, put it all together in one story, the Qur'anic adventure, the Qur'anic story, the story of transformation, this exclamation mark. And he wrapped that together perfectly by God's grace and by God's design. And it is preserved perfectly by God's grace and his design so that we can be transformed by the story of revelation. We can't say we lost the user's manual because we as Muslims believe that this is preserved and this is preserving what came before it. So that, my friends, is the beginning of the story of the Qur'an Year Timeline. Now, we are still just scratching at the surface and we have a lot more to do. I previously, when I was thinking about how I was going to do this, I kept going and I just did everything in one talk. But I think it's better to break this up into smaller chunks so that you can kind of go back quickly, repeat this video if it's still a little bit fuzzy for you. And only when you've mastered this, then we move on to the next thing. The way I teach is how I learned that God taught, okay, how the prophet taught. And they taught by moving one step at a time, okay? We go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. So I'm not going to give you all 4 steps at once. Master this and then move on to the next one. Master this and then move on to the next one. That's what we're going to do as we're building the Qur'an Year Timeline. So I hope this was helpful for you. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking about this, if this is making sense for you. This is how I approach my faith. This is how I think we need to recapture the transformative power of faith so it has an actual meaningful, powerful impact in our day-to-day lives. So I hope you enjoyed this. Feel free to share this with anyone who you think might benefit from it. I promise you, God willing, it will only blow your mind from here because we are just getting started. It's going to get awesome. We're going to go through in the next episode mnemonics to how to remember everything that's happening in all 23 years. And then after that, we're going to start talking about what the Quran has to do with the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And finally, before I forget, we have a free giveaway for all of you who have watched this episode. If you go to my website, therevelationexperience.com, link down below, you can download a free PDF of the Qur'an Year Timeline. It's totally blank so that you can quiz yourself. You can give it to your kids, your parents, your friends. Hey, you know what? Give it to a stranger. And more importantly, you can join thousands of other people who are joining this movement, the revelationexperience.com, this movement to start embracing the Quran and letting it have a transformational impact on you. So join the other thousands of people who have already signed up at the revelationexperience.com so that you can get those PDFs, see the courses that are available to you. You will have access to the free audiobook to the Revelation book that I wrote right there. The entire free audiobook, over 100 episodes I am working on constantly, pumping them out. You will have complete access to that, completely free for you to enjoy. It is personal, it is powerful, and it has beautiful Quranic recitation interwoven into the experience itself. So all of that for you. Thanks so much for being a part of this episode. I count to see you in the next episode, inshallah. I will see you guys soon. Assalamu alaikum.